Live. Folks, we are live. Welcome to Talking Crit. We have a hell of a show lined up.
Oh
I
my
am
God.
Eric Tenkar. With me, as always, I'm getting the pointing right this time, is the one and only Bad Mike Battalato.
And I'm fired up today. We're going to have rants a million today. We got
Just
rants.
buckle up, folks. It's rant night.
Let's go. We got
Listen,
rants.
I already got to hear Jim Kitchen rants from before the show, pre-show
Shit.
warm-up rants.
If Jim
That's
and I
right.
both rant, then Eric's just going to sit back and take a nap tonight.
Yes.
Oh, no. Well, although that might be useful because I got a 11 and a half hour drive ahead of me tomorrow. I'm heading out to WotC and I'm driving.
Going to Poconos? No,
Michigan.
You're going to WotC, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to Kalamazoo.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's going to be a hell of a drive. Route 80.
So do we want to start with little rants? Do we want to start with
let's work ourselves
All
out.
right, so let me just do a little bit before you do that, Jim. Let me just go to a little bit of housekeeping here. Next week we are going to have Bill Webb, Zach Glazer, maybe even Jen Glazer on. They're going to talk about Necromancer's Game, which is the new box set coming out from Frog Guy Games. What else? General news I wanted to share with you guys. That's about it. Oh, my wife's out of town for 3 weeks, so it's
party time.
Anybody wants to part? Let's part. So I mean, there's no reason not just pop this baby open. Just hit
wow, it, excellent. All right, so I'll start with a little miniature rant. So, I am in many different groups, gaming groups across the F of Book or the Book of F or Facebook or whatever you want to call it. And today in one of the chats, there are a lot of people out there who claim to be artists. A lot of them are using Grok or one of the others to generate AI images. But there are still people who put pen to paper and who never actually finished a high school art class. But these people are notorious because they haunt. Facebook created these chats, these general chats for gaming groups. And these people just pollute and haunt chats. They're like, would you like some commissions? I do commissions. Would you like to do commissions? And you look at them, and Mike will particularly shudder when I say this. They look like bad black and white comics from 1988. and today I was in a chat. I was having one of those days, and I was having one of those days. I drove back from Kentucky yesterday. That's another story. But I was in this chat popped up, and this person is like, "Hey, has anybody had a chance to look at do any of you have any critiques for the art I did for their original characters, their OCs?" And I might have actually responded with a critique. Now, my critique is probably not what they were looking for because it said, I've seen better artistic composition in the spoon section of my cutlery drawer. And I've seen a better use of colors in applique sweaters from Coldwater Creek. And if you didn't know it, Coldwater Creek is where all the teachers shop.
Oh, dear.
So, I responded, and it was a bad moment on my part, and I apologize. But then I realized that I should not have done that, and instead should have reached out to the admin, who then promptly made this person go away. But it just goes to show we all have bad moments. I recognize that in a moment of weakness, I perhaps went for the jugular when I didn't need to. But at the same time, we all suffer these fools endlessly, and I struck back for the many of us who have had to endure their shenanigans. So that's my warm-up rant.
Well, Jim, let me add to that 1 second, Jim. I want to say that, I've seen a lot of really, really bad meltdowns this year. We're not going to get into politics or anything, but it's just been a rough year, right? It's been a rough year.
Yes.
A lot of meltdowns. Yes. And I'm just telling people, look, you got to chill, man. You've got to chill. This is everything that's going on in the world right now is not going to solve itself by tomorrow or next week or next month. Yes. It may go on the rest of our lives. I don't know, but you got to have some chill because I see people that I love and that I know and that are friends absolutely losing it. And
they lose their damn minds right now. I'm aggrieved for all of us. If I get aggrieved, I get aggrieved for everybody in my community. Right. And these people, they're relentless, right? They show up, and as soon as you banhammer them, they show up under a different name, right? Mm-hmm. And they're just constant. And so this is what greatly offends me. This is where I'm like, you know what? if this was somebody who had a booth at North Texas or is, I always look at their profiles. I always look at their profiles to see. And when they are literally a profile that's a month old and they've never been to a Gen Con, they don't have a website, they're just whatever, then the kid gloves are off, right? I don't feel any remorse. What I do feel bad about is that I actually sort of said that in public when in fact I should have sent it as a direct message and then been blocked, right?
Jim, don't worry about it, because here's the deal. So Gary and I, we don't have very many admins for the North Texas site, for example. I think we have 4 because it's a small site. There's a few thousand people on there. We can handle it. But everybody there has to go through us before they can post for the first time. And at least every day I probably ban half a dozen people because, like you said, they're not really real people. They're just people trying to sell something, or they're scammers, or they're people like you, like, hey, I've got art, I paint miniatures. Now there's a miniature painter that does post on North Texas. They have a booth at the con. I've given them the okay.
Amen.
Post all you want. Post what you want. And so just the people that get on there that don't have any kind of they don't have anything in the convention. They don't come to the convention. They probably don't even know what the convention is about. Sometimes, because I have one of those things where you have to answer questions to get in. Sometimes the laughable attempts to answer the questions. What's your favorite version of D&D? Texas. I mean, I got that one yesterday. Texas.
Boom. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. D&D.
I get the exact same thing, and it irritates the crap out of me, and I wish it wasn't the case. But
anyway, you admit sites too. That's right.
Let's move on to other things. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. So let's start with if this was Jeopardy categories for tonight. We'll start with the easy one, which is tariffs.
Tariffs for 100, please.
Oh, okay. So tariffs for 100. So
we know everybody here is tired of hearing about tariffs, but bear with us.
But let's just talk about this for a second, right? So number one is tariffs. This week has seen a lot of game companies that have said a number of things. We're going bankrupt. We're going out of business. We don't have solutions. Blah 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 blah. To wit, what I would say is that in the last 10 days, 2 weeks, there has been a lot of things. There's been a lot of sliding scales. Things have moved very rapidly, and in some cases, the big thing here is we've talked about this over the last couple of weeks. That number one, the RPG industry as a whole sort of moved to Asian printers and Asian board game assembly and so on to save money. That this was a matter of time before somehow, some way there was a hiccup. This certainly doesn't constitute just a hiccup. It's a major hiccup fit, whatever you want to call it. But what I have said all along, which is this is negotiation in play. And this is stuff that's moving very quickly. Reports coming out of China are that there are a lot of manufacturers in China with empty factories, and there are a lot of unhappy people, and there are a lot of unhappy business people. In the end, what you have to remember is the U.S. economy is larger than the Chinese economy. Population doesn't count. The economies there is a difference between these economies. And what we're seeing is probably more bare knuckle negotiation than people would like, but we're not at the end of it yet. And every single major department store chain's president and CEO was in the White House today saying, whoa, like, you got to knock this shit off. And let's keep this a little bit away from the political side of things and just say, we haven't seen the dust settle yet. Eric has talked about this. He's talked about tariffs over the last week or so. There's some episodes of the shows that you should go see. But we have people that have reached the absolute worst case conclusion. And I'm not against planning for worst case, but we're not there yet. These are not permanent tariffs. There's still negotiation at play. There's a lot of countries that are coming to the U.S. and saying, you know what, we want to change our tariff structures and so on and so forth, which I think spin the wheel of our current administration. That's really the result that everybody wants, right? Is reduced barriers to trade and open trade. But at the same time, and we've talked about it here, onshore manufacturing, North American printing, North American assembly, blah, 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 blah. But we have some companies that who've absolutely, we're going to go out of business. We're going to be bankrupt. Our shipment is going to cost this instead of what it was. And these numbers are insane and we can't do it. And blah, 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 blah. What I would say is, just as I have counseled people not to look at your retirement account for at least a month, don't get caught up in the hour-to-hour, day-to-day news cycle, right? If you find that you're being relentlessly agitated or upset, or don't panic. I guess that's really the root of it. Don't panic. More than anything else, take a breath and let's see where the dust settles, because we're not there yet. We just aren't there yet.
Than that, Elk. So I have my brother Robert, to the shame of the Bad Lotto name. If you attended the midnight auction, you know what I'm talking about. But I have a younger brother, Matt, who's he's kind of we're the ne'er-do-wells of the family. He's the upstanding young. He's very well. He's in the circuit. So Elk says he's lost $55,000. Talking to my brother, I said, "How's the stock market doing?"
Elk has a second part of that sentence. I had a margin call.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm sorry that he had a margin call that did not go well.
That will happen. And that's the well, you go ahead, Jim.
I don't know Elk specifics, but let me just, I have a great story from 25 years ago that I need to tell about this, right? From 24 years ago. 24 years ago, I'm working at Microsoft. And the guy, one of my best friends in the world, was 2 cubicles away from me. And in between us, there was a guy who had roughly gotten married about the same time I did, whose wife worked for Real Networks. You guys all remember Real Player?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So his wife had been with Real Networks from the beginning and had an ungodly amount of Real Network stock. And so if you remember, I think it was 2002, January of 2002, the Super Bowl aired, and that was the beginning of when .coms became .bombs, right? That it just began picking up speed and everything started to go bad. Well, when we started that assignment at Microsoft, this guy, his name was David. At the start of the assignment, my friend Brent and I were standing around one day, and he was talking about how he was going to be filthy rich, unimaginably rich, because he had discovered he discovered playing the market on margin, and that the market was always going to go up, and things were always going to go up. And this is why he was going to be rich. Now, Brent and I both looked at him and were like, buddy, you really have to know what you're doing to play margin, right? And if you are desirous to know more about margins, you can go, there's a great Reddit group to discuss this. I do not pretend to be a margin expert, but I know enough that it scares the hell out of me, and I don't have enough time to do what I need to do to make margins work. Brent and I both discussed this with David probably August or September. But in February, and I remember this, right? It was right around Valentine's Day. And David gets a phone call in his booth, in his cubicle. And it is one of those phone calls where you can't hear the other side of it, but you can hear the tone of his conversation dropping like a rock. And he jumps out of his cube and says, I have to go to the bank. I'll be back. Okay. Like, what's going on? I just got a margin call. And he owed $25,000, $30,000 that day. It had to be in his account cash. So he runs off to the bank and makes the payment. And he comes back, and he's like a little shaken, and we're like, what's going on? And he said, I hit a margin call, and I've never had one of those before, and blah, 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 blah. And we're like, you're still playing margins? He's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. Like, this should be a warning to you. And he's like, oh, no. Like, the market's going to turn. The next day, he got another margin call. This time, it was for $50,000. and he had to drop everything and go to the bank and get the money and make the payment. Now that was Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, he got a $70,000 margin call. And you know, in the week, he was at 250. By the time Friday ended, he was at $250 cash that he had to fund his account. And he still had margin positions open. By the end of the week, they were selling his wife's Real Networks stock to pay off the margin calls. And then into the next week, the second week of this, they were liquidating her Real Networks stock, but Real Networks was crashing at the same time, which meant that they had to sell more of her shares to raise the amount of money. Now, in week 2, by Monday or Tuesday, he was into like 6 figures of margin calls by the end of by the end of Tuesday. And by Wednesday or Thursday, they had stripped all of her entire Real Networks stock gone. And then he got another margin call. And the only way he was going to get out of it was if her father wrote the check to pay off the margin call. And you know about playing on margin. If you have any, if you have your Series 7 and your Series 63, you have to learn about margin and puts and everything else. And I can remember my grandfather telling horror stories about margin calls. But this is a good time to talk about this, right? Because this is a deadly serious way of playing in the stock market. And you are doing exactly that. You're playing with borrowed money. And I feel terrible for Elk. I feel absolutely terrible for Elk, right? But I would say you have to know what you're doing. And I think Elk clearly demonstrates that he understands that, right? But this is playing with fire if you don't know what you're doing. And the guy I worked with at Microsoft 24 years ago had no fucking clue what he was doing, and he paid the price for it. And
it's always a danger because, like I was saying there, it's borrowed money. And look, you could have no problem and I've got a story, Jim's story too about viatical. Well, I was gonna say, so years ago, when we were investing, when I was back really investing money, and my brothers were investing money, my dad passed away, left us a large amount of money, each of us, and we had a friend who said, "Oh, you guys got to get into viaticals." I'm like, what's a viatical? Viatical is when you buy an insurance policy for somebody who's going to die in usually about 2 years. And you pay them a lump sum. They get the money, so they're able to enjoy it for the 1 or 2 years left. And you get the full value of the insurance when they die. And the good part about it, if you're investing in viaticals, it comes when, if they don't live very long, you're only going to make 2 years of payments on it, and you're getting the full value of the life insurance policy, which was great for years and years because one of the biggest viatical clients was AIDS sufferers. People who had AIDS. AIDS was a fatal disease. Everybody that got AIDS, I mean, you pretty much died when you had AIDS. I had 2 friends that died of AIDS. It was a one-way train. So this is back when everybody was dying of AIDS, and he said, you need to put all your money in viaticals. And he pitched us and pitched us and pitched us. And I looked at it, and I treated it the same way I treated margins. I just didn't want to take the chance. And none of us did. My brothers and I said, no. Problem with viaticals is that they came up with the cocktail for AIDS. And all these people, including my friend, that had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in viaticals were screwed. Because the people that had 2-year life expectancy were suddenly living 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. At that point, the value of the life insurance policy, you basically canceled it out. You're making the payments on a life insurance policy. This person may live another 20 years. You're screwed. So so as Jim was saying about the same thing with margins, any of these investments have inherent risk. And I posted in there, my little brother lost $500,000 in the stock market last month. And I was like, are you okay with that? He said, I lost $700,000 the last time we had a crash. He goes, but you get it all back. He said, it's just go up, down, up, down. He said, you get it back. I got it back, but now I'm going to have,
So-
luckily I'm not anywhere near retirement, he told me. And so it's everything that you do, stock, it all has an inherent risk in it. Nothing is guaranteed.
But
Nothing is
Bob
guaranteed.
G just chimed in with something, and I think we should dovetail out of this. But Bob says, playing options, use the money you can lose without fear. Abso-flippin'-lutely, right?
Yeah, if you're going to go, it's the same thing if you go to Vegas and I'm going to bet $500, and when $500
Every
is
time
gone,
I've ever walked into
I
a
walk out of the
casino,
casino.
I've had the three $20 bills that I've been willing to bet. And as soon as those three $20 bills are either gone or I've walked away from the table and I have more than that, I GTFO and I'm done.
I do 100. I do 100, and when it's time to go, it's time to go. And when the 100's
It's
gone,
time to go.
It's over.
But what I would
over.
say is, just like COVID was a seismic event in the stock market and everything else, this tariff business is created a firestorm that we need to sort of let things settle down and see where we are a month from now. And the sky, I don't think the sky is falling, but there's certainly some rain in some quarters that I wish it wasn't. But I don't have any control over it.
If you're somebody that has a product right now in China, it sucks because you are at the mercy of whatever. You don't know I just keep reading every day the doom and the gloom and I keep seeing it. The situation changes daily. It changes every freaking day. To where it was going to be this, now it's going to be this and this, and all we want to do is tell people just be patient. Just be
Don't
patient.
panic, right? This is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't panic.
And I have a theory that I hope is not true, and that I will ask people to be very careful. If you have invested in a Kickstarter, because basically it's an investment, you may or may not get your money or your
right. They tell you that up front, man.
If you invested in your Kickstarter, and they're telling you that, well, we can't fulfill the Kickstarter because fill in the blank. Be very suspicious, because I have a theory that I think that one or more unscrupulous Kickstarter people may keep your money and say, oh, I couldn't fulfill it because of fill in the blank, tariffs, Trump, whatever. And they're going to keep your money and not fulfill the Kickstarter. Be very careful of those people. Watch them like a hawk, because I think you will be able to fulfill your Kickstarters. I'm just worried that people are going to take advantage of the situation and they're going to tap out and say, oh, I couldn't fulfill it, and I'm just going to, and they're going to keep the money, and it's just going to be like it's a Ponzi scheme.
All right. I want to. This is a good time to transition, but I have a little point of order, and this came up last night in a conversation. So many of you know that I'm good friends with the owner of the Century Box, which is one of the world's largest game stores. He had the world's largest square footage at 28,000, but I think there's another store that's now beaten that. But Gord moves more games and more merchandise through that store than 10 game stores combined. And Gord and I are very good friends. But we've waxed on and on about Shadow Dark, but I'm just going to throw something out, which is Gord has been trying to get Shadow Dark. Now, apparently Shadow Dark is not being distributed in the United States or anywhere else through distributors. If you want it, you have to go to Arcane Library directly, which Gord has done. Gord has reached out to the Arcane Library, and no one's bothering to answer his emails, which surprises me. And so Kelsey or anybody else from Arcane Library that's watching this, my friend Gord has sent you several emails about trying to get copies of Shadow Dark for his store and would like to carry things. And even if you don't have a retailer discount, he'd still like to buy it and have it in the store. But you got to answer the man's emails. And I was very disappointed to hear this, right?
I know. I'll tell you, Jim, from personal experience, they're absolutely swamped right now. I know Gary and we've had recent conversations with Kelsey. She got her games in right under the wire, like literally a day before the enrollment opened up. And that was the only reason, was because we just kept at her. Kelsey, we need the games. We need the games. She is so swamped right now because of the Kickstarter, because everything going on with she's got a lot going on. So I would just tell your friend, he may just have to wait. She has always answered my email. It hasn't always been with speed, but she has always answered my emails eventually.
Okay. But I was surprised by that. I was very surprised.
It's basically Jesse, it's Michael, who's our helper, and it's Kelsey, and that's it. That they got 3 people dealing with, all the stuff that happened, not to mention the $2 million Kickstarter that just ended, and then now they're having to deal with possibly tariffs. They're going to have to figure out what they're doing with that. And by the way, she has gone on record as saying that the Kickstarter will fulfill. They built in tariff stuff, so that which I think is really cool. They're saying nope, and I get the impression, and this is just my impression, that if the profit margin's less, it's not going to bother her, and I think that's where it's going to come from. I think the profit margin for the arcade library is going to be less, but they're going to fulfill the Kickstarters. But once again, they're probably like everybody else. They're just going to wait and see what happens. They're waiting to see how things settle out. One day it's 245% tariffs, then it was 100, then it's 20, then it's. I mean, they don't know. Nobody knows, and so they're trying to deal with this right now. I'm positive Kelsey will get around to your friend. They're just swamped, and like I said, and Gary and I Gary said the same thing, that we have never not had her contact us eventually. Sometimes it's a week or more, or even longer, but we've always had her contact us.
So let's talk about something else. We had topic number 2 of tonight's.
This is going to be my rant topic. I have a feeling.
Okay, so rant powers activate. Form of annoyed Michael.
So, wherever you stand on the notion of X cards, and look, I'm even going to go here and say that X cards don't bother me. That they don't existentially mess with my life. If somebody wants to use X cards in a game, it doesn't bother me. And for those who don't know, X card is a card you're given at the table if a game master, or you can make the symbol. If a game master delves into territory in the game that is a little squicky for you, or something that has a personal problem, you have a personal problem with, you're scared of spiders, you have arachnophobia, you cannot deal with spiders. The topic of perhaps child abuse, slavery. There's all kinds of issues that can come up in a game that may just absolutely flip your switch. The X card is basically something where you hold it up, no discussion necessary. The game master will change the subject based on what you're having the X card about. So you go into a room, there's thousands of spiders crawling everywhere. There's thousands of frogs. I mean, whatever. Personally, I would not use the X card, because my theory about the X card is, if you're an adult playing a game, you should be able to tell the game master, this is material I'm not comfortable with. And I don't know if we've all had this, but enough of us had the experience of a game master that doesn't understand limits and will, as in the case of who was the game master in the UK that ran the sci-fi game that we always we just ripped this guy always, who decided it was a great idea in his live game on YouTube, to put in a sexual assault on one of his players and have him role play that. And of course, he ended up losing his job over that. The channel was shut down. Everybody quit the game, because that's just, come on. If you are an intelligent human being, you should know, if you're going to have mature subjects in your game, you label the game mature audiences only. Look, if you're going to play in one of James Raggy's Lamentations games, you know what you're getting in for. If you don't know what you're getting in for, you live on the other side of the moon. And he marks all his games mature. He's running some games in North Texas here. They're marked M as in mature, which means no, please, if you're 18 or under, we don't really want you in the game. And if you're 18 or older, or if you're 19 and older, just be prepared. There's going to be some stuff in there that may offend your sensibilities.
You go in with your eyes wide open.
And conversely, I understand that some people are introverted and don't want to make a scene at the table. But if I'm in a game and I'm personally offended by something, Jim, I will get up and walk out, because I don't want to spoil everybody's fun. If everybody else is having a good time and they start talking about, I'm trying to think of something that would just probably.
So let's not think about specifics, right? Because I think,
but I would just leave. I would say, look, this is not something that to me, the game isn't fun anymore. I'd like to leave. And so this week I noticed that Chaosium, the publishers of Call of Cthulhu, are marketing their own X card decks. And I had to pause for a second, because we're talking about a game called Cthulhu that was written by a possibly mentally ill racist in the 1920s. Well, I mean, he was a racist, possibly mentally ill because he had some issues.
I think we can say that he was racist.
He was absolutely racist.
But it was
a lot of it was
don't
of the
believe
time.
that it was
Jim, he was racist even for the time. He went.
No, that I'm not trying to forgive that. I'm trying to remember if he was ever publicly racist. Like if he ever.
Because back then you didn't have social media and stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
yes, the letters he wrote to Robert E. Howard, they wrote back and forth.
But that's private correspondence.
Yeah, private correspondence.
I think he did use a
never
couple
publicly.
of words.
He didn't say stuff in public, and his stories have an element of there's some subtext in his stories.
Yes.
So, but the stories they concern about cosmic evil, cosmic horror beyond the ken of men. Horror so horrible that if you look at the eye, you go insane, Jim. You lose your brain.
Okay.
You're insane.
Stop, because you nailed the problem right off the bat, which is this is a hobby rife with people who have the social maturity of a three-toed tree sloth. And really and truly, there are some people out there, if they like a girl, they're going to follow her around and all but breathe on her neck without actually talking to her. If they're in a situation where they're uncomfortable, they're going to stew in their own juices before they ever would even whisper a word out loud. If they're cold because somebody keeps turning the thermostat down, they're just going to go to their room and get a blanket and wrap themselves up like Duke Leto II, God Emperor of Dune. And really and truly, Crom does not care. Yes, Ty, thank you. I was literally thinking that Crom does not care. And I'm really of the belief that if you are not enough of an adult to leave a situation where you are uncomfortable, or raise your hand and say this is inappropriate, or when they've gone really too far, not to call them out for it publicly, loudly, to make them stop. This is on.
My particular problem though with Chaosium doing this is Dungeons and Dragons or fantasy genre in general. It's not necessarily a horrific genre. I mean, there's all kinds of sword and sorcery. There is a category called dark sword and sorcery, and it's more mature and grim dark and that. But
I believe what you're saying is it's more warriors of gore than perhaps your average.
It's more, or maybe there's a couple of authors that write some really grim stuff. I can't. The names are. I can't remember those out. I mean, some of George Martin's stuff is. George R. R. Martin.
Like Ty says, what do we say about game companies that monetize and encourage pandering to such ridiculous bullshit? Here's what I say, right? They're not going to sell it at a loss, and they're not going to sell it where they don't make some money. And frankly, if they sell it at a profit and they make a profit from it, that's great. If they sell it and they make some profit, but it does not sell and it is blown out or clearanced or written off as a loss, they'll learn that lesson. And I think they can do this.
But they
should be able to do this.
So normal fantasy, probably, unless you're running a Lamentations game, probably should be, in most cases, tame enough for most people to play in, unless the game master just says, look, I'm going to take this to I'm going to take this to 11 tonight. The problem I have with it is Chaosium, or Call of Cthulhu as a game, deliberately pushes those limits with every single scenario and the whole concept. Do you know what deep ones are? You know what deep ones are, right?
Oh, come on, right? Like the X card has to start getting thrown out as soon as we start talking about Innsmouth.
Deep ones are fish people that from Rely that have mated with humans. And I mean, it goes. Everything Lovecraft wrote and everything all the Lovecraft imitators all the Lovecraft circle wrote about, it's deliberately pushes the boundaries of good taste because it's horror. It's horrific. Every part of it is horrific. So when you say that Chaosium has X cards, I don't understand, because I just think the X card be held up the whole game.
Even better. Wait, time out. These are free. These are
Yes.
free. Okay, so these are free. And unfortunately, let me look. I'm following the link. But one of the unfortunate things is we can't see how many times these are downloaded. Right? Who cares?
It's
right?
gonna be. It's a horror game. There's horrific stuff. There's some Call of Cthulhu scenarios that Eric and I have talked about in the past. The ones written by David Hargraves are horrific. I mean, I can't even tell you what's so horrific about them because it's that horrific that I don't want to say it out loud.
I find this is a nothing sandwich with a big slice of nothing in the middle of the nothing buns, because frankly, I don't know. Now Ty is ranting.
Why are they doing that? The thing is, why are they doing this? Because I said,
because somebody somewhere came up to the convention and said, you need X cards. And they were like, screw it. Let's make downloadable PDF printable X cards. And exactly what somebody said earlier, the 0.00001%, what Bill Barr said is if those people need an X card, well, Chaosium's got Chaosium themed X cards. And if you need it, you can do it. And again,
so
adults won't use these.
Dennis Astaire, who is a legend in gaming, and an elder gentleman who created Bunnies and Burrows with Dr. Scott Robinson, and he created the Druid character, whatever. He gave a unintended burn to Chaos the other day, because when they announced this on their page, he posted underneath, "I'm offended by sanity loss."
Well,
and they said, well, then you can just go play another game then. They didn't know it was Dennis Astaire being funny. They thought it was some guy saying, "Oh," so they said, well, you just go play another game. Go play another game if you don't like sanity loss.
Well, and come on, right? Like, I don't know. I know a few of the principals at Chaosium, but none of these are people that I see hanging from the parapets, patting themselves on the back that they've made these X cards.
There's an adventure called Return to Dunwich, where you're underneath the earth trying to find out why everybody in Dunwich is so weird, and you find it. It's a alien growth beneath there that traps people, and they don't die. They just sit there and they rot, and then they break to pieces eventually. And at one point you find somebody there, and if you try to pull them out, their arm comes off because they're a husk, and they scream and they die. So you're playing that.
That's what happens if you don't use X cards.
What is the DM supposed to do? Go, this is a horrific creature that you're supposed to destroy with fire. Burn it with fire.
But Mike,
if I put up the X card, like, nope, I don't want to fight this monster.
Listen, take a deep breath. Mike, take a deep breath.
Take a breath.
Here's their sales pitch for their free cards. Everyone's well-being is more important than any game. The X card system created by John Stavropoulos, whatever, is one way to help players and game masters feel safe and comfortable when role-playing together, especially in convention and game store settings. So already there's an assumption that if you're playing with your home group, there's a communication that goes on that you don't need X cards. But at the same time, they're very happy for you to print out their X cards. And when somebody asks, where'd you get that X card? Oh, Chaosium provided it. This is about advertising. That's what it is. And it's listen, I think it's halfway damn genius to do it this way, because you're getting your I'm surprised they didn't splash Chaosium, at some point on it, but you're getting a product out there at conventions and game stores. They don't want you using this at home because there's no sales pitch involved. There's no getting their product in front of other
This is a token. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say this is what they call performative activism. In other words, we're gonna be activists, but really we're not really doing anything to help anybody. It's performative activism. We're pretending that we're doing something, but really we're not doing anything.
It's marketing. It's literally marketing, and it's not stupid.
I don't go to people.
Conventions and game stores. Genius.
I think again, the number of people that need X cards is infinitely outweighed by the number of people who don't.
And this is probably much. Look, I will admit, Jim, this is probably much ado about nothing on my part. I just thought the irony and the hypocrisy of a company that publishes a game that is about the most horrific horror of all time, that inspired Stephen King and all the horror writers of the 20th century, Dean Koontz, that this is so horrific that, oh no, it might be too horrific. We don't want to be too horrific here, guys. Whoa, hold on.
I think they're trying. I think they're just trying to appeal to as wide an audience as possible. And come on, when I look at the PDF, which I downloaded, when I look at the PDF, this is a no effort attempt to make that segment happy and nothing else. And I don't see Chaosium strolling around conventions going, by the way, did you know we have an X card? We have an X card.
Well, that just came out.
That's not how they're going to lead their discussion, right?
Maybe we'll see it next. I have, this half makes me want to go play in a Chaosium event at Chaosium Con, and just every time there's something that Sandy lost, X card. I don't want to see the brains of that dead.
Sure. And you know what? That's called being a dick. And you don't need to be a dick, right? Like, I would like to believe that all of us, either on the show or in the comments or whatever, don't strive every day to go forward. And today I shall be dickish. Like, no, sometimes it happens by accident.
Yes.
But you don't purposely sign up for a game to derail it, because that's just
I would never actually do this. I'm just saying that's the kind of thing that my mind immediately goes to, because I'm like, what are they thinking? What is the process of their thinking?
Take it to the next logical step. The next logical step is Wizards of the Coast finding a way to monetize something like this with D&D themes on it. And that I can see. Chaosium is doing it for free as whatever. I can see Wizards of the Coast going, how can we make money off this? It's a low effort.
We need a reverse X card. We need an A card or whatever.
No,
take it up a notch. Take it up a notch.
See, that
this is how you get furries. Do you want more furries? Because this is how you get furries.
Oh,
okay, they're right there. I would be X card and furries all day long. If I
have an A card in one hand and X card in the other hand. X, A.
Boom. Oh no, did we lose Jim? We lost Jim.
He
mentioned furries. See, he should have said furries. He said the word. Anyway, you understand do you guys know? So look, I'm just ranting. You understand what I'm ranting about, right? Because I just can't understand the hypocrisy here. It's like somebody mentioned earlier, which is true. The guys who bought the Conan game are trying to Care Bear Conan, which is just like, oh my God. I mean,
Crom does not care for your Care Bears.
He's a giant Iron Food barbarian that slashes his way through monsters and grabs scantily clad women and rescues them and goes off and does whatever before he moves on to the next adventure. I don't understand why you're trying to Care Bear that and say, oh, no, he's not. He's going to have a relationship with this woman. They need to be boyfriend girlfriend first, because calm down, calm down, people. It's Conan the Barbarian. He trod empires under his sandals. I mean, this should not be, he's a bad guy. He's a badass guy, but he needs to take it down a notch. He's too violent.
So this reminds me, so there's a guy who goes by Dano. I've met him at GaryCon a few years in a row. Nicest guy in the world. And he has an appreciation for the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse from TSR, all the artists, Elmore and Late Night Clive Caldwell, blah, blah, blah. And he posted a picture the other day. And of course, somebody had to start attacking him in the comments as puerile and haven't we outgrown chainmail bikinis and so on and so forth. And I genuinely, I beheld this with splendor. It's never the people who love chainmail bikinis who go into groups with people who want their characters appropriately attired, who then advocate, well, shouldn't you all be in bikinis? Shouldn't you? Have you thought about chainmail bikinis? There's nobody from that side goes over to start picking a fight. It's always the anti-chainmail bikini crowd that desperately wants recognition. And here's the deal. I am a 50-something-year-old white guy. I loved me some chainmail bikinis when I was younger. And I got news for you.
Uh-oh, here we go.
I love me some chainmail bikinis right now.
Hello, Red Sonja.
Better not. Better not.
And if
How
you
dare
think I
you.
don't, you're crazy. Because it doesn't matter that it's like Deja Thoris, right? You might as well yell at me for liking Deja Thoris because I got news for you. It ain't gonna go anywhere.
She was pretty much almost naked in most of those stories too.
That's right.
But by the way, this is equal opportunity because for everybody that wants to scream about Red Sonja being in a chainmail bikini, Conan was in a loincloth a lot more than she was in a chainmail bikini.
Dude, I don't even think it was a loincloth. I think he just didn't groom. I think
it was just hairy. He didn't shave down there because most of the time his ripped 6-pack physique was on display for the ladies. So
I just there's so many other things that
by the way, just ask my wife when we're watching the latest Jason Statham movie and he ripped his shirt off and I heard
oh, dude,
are you okay?
She's like, do you guys remember do you remember the TV show Las Vegas?
Oh yes,
that had James Caan and Josh Duhamel.
I love that show. That's a great show.
So lo and behold, the second season starts. Right, the second season starts, and when it began, the pilot episode, the redheaded character, I can't remember what her name is. She opens the door, and Josh Duhamel is at her doorstep.
Oh boy!
And Josh Duhamel is a fine-looking man.
Mm-hmm.
And when she opened the door and he was there, all of America could hear every woman watching that show go,
oh, you should have
millions of cougars roaring at once.
Jim, you should have heard the theater when we were watching A Working Man, which, by the way, good movie. If you like to see Jason Statham beat the shit out of people,
absolutely.
The whole theater, the scene where he rips his shirt, where his shirt gets ripped off. Every woman in the theater was like,
That's right.
I kept hearing these noises all the theater, like, what's going on here? And all the guys in the theater looking around going,
I will never look like that. Ever.
Oh. So yes. So anyway, but
I felt bad for Dano because he didn't go picking this fight. Some pinhead shows up and is like, oh, by the way, aren't you all... and so
by the way, there used to be an art. So this is funny because late 70s, early 80s, comic books started to get a little more progressive in their attitudes about stuff. You had more female superheroes, more, everything things got better. They got better in a way. But the problem is there was a lot of people out there that said, these skin-tight outfits these superheroes wear, that's ridiculous. Nobody looks good in that. You could never put somebody in a skin suit material and they would go blah, 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 on and on. They need to wear realistic costumes. Nobody can wear spandex. Nobody can wear that. Well, here we are. And guess what? The MCU proved and the DC Universe proved, yes, you can find physiques that look great in skin-tight spandex. It was just that nobody up till then had actually made a movie about a superhero where they had somebody in skin-tight spandex. But yes, you can look good in skin-tight spandex. I've seen cosplayers look great in chainmail bikinis. I've seen cosplayers that did Conan that looked great in a loincloth. Not my fancy, not really my speed, but I've seen some really good-looking Conans. So let's just be adults about this. And just say that sometimes we like the human body. The human body, when it is perfectly in shape, physique, looks pretty good. Which, by the way, I want to announce here. I know I get reamed for my Jenny D, fandom. I am now turning in my Jenny D card. I'm going to turn it in. She's no longer my dream girl. I have switched my allegiance to Dallas Wings first-round pick Paige Beckers. She is my new dream girl.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you in Selma Hayek or Monica Bellucci, so you're dead to me.
So,
no offense, but
I will start referring to Paige Beckers when I talk about my unattainable dream girl and not Jenny D. So Jenny D, thanks for coming. It was great to have you, but it's time to move on. We're getting a little younger at this position. We're getting a little sportier. We're going to have Dallas Wings forward. Paige Beckers is my new.
So here's my
Team Phoenix. You got me scared.
Here's my point, right? Oh, Satine Phoenix life coach. Thanks. Sorry. God,
Don't do that
I
one.
can't behind it from here.
But really and truly, like I just, again, why would you go into somebody's, don't go onto somebody else's Facebook wall and pick a fight. Don't go onto somebody's Twitter post and pick a fight. You don't need to do that. Nobody likes that person. You're going to be mocked. You're going to be made fun of. You're not going to win the converts, right? Like, these are like political arguments. Just because you're standing on a street corner ranting doesn't mean that the people walking by, A, want to hear you, or B, are going to take your arguments as a valid counterpoint to what they may believe. And this just doesn't fly, right? It doesn't work, and we're all better than that. Just respect people's love of Red Sonja and move the fuck on. Just let it go. But now we're to topic number 3, and it's a doozy. But before we get there, let me tell everybody watching. I haven't spoken about this with Mike or Eric. I have decided to take one for the team, and so going forward, starting next week, I am going to read all of the Breezy Doundren novels for you, and I'm going to do a little summary every week of all of the books. And wait. I just wanted to know, I checked them all out of the library. I have the giant stack of them. I'm going to take some notes as I read them, but I'm going to read all of Salvatore's epic works so that you don't have to. We will have a brief discussion about the adventures of Easy Breezy Doundren Girl every week for a few weeks until we're caught up. So
I think, how many books are this series? 16?
So I got 5. I believe there's 5, and the 6th one is now coming out.
I think.
I'm sorry, as a character, as she appears.
I think you'll make it about. I'm going to bet you're going to make it 7, 8 books in, and then you're going to give up.
No, I'm only reading the ones with Breezy. I'm only reading the ones with Breezy.
Oh, only the new ones.
Only
the new
Breezy.
ones. Oh, you're not starting from the very, very beginning. Okay, I got it.
No, God, no. I don't have enough time in my life left for that. So
no, you don't.
But I'm going to go ahead and take it on the chin to read about Easy Breezy Doundren Girl for everybody else, and that way you don't have to. So
thank you, because I appreciate you taking that hit, because I wasn't ever going to do it myself.
No. So Easy Breezy Doundren Girl update will start next week, and
I had as much chance of reading a Breezy novel as I did showing up for Satine Phoenix's next wedding, which is
that's right.
0.
Whenever that may be, somewhere in Thailand on other people's money.
It'll be. Oh, you know what? By the way, my wife's in Thailand now. I should ask her to look Satine up. Maybe they can hang out.
Oh my God! You should totally ask.
I'm going to text her. Look for a girl with elf ears and that smells of despair.
No. She doesn't wear the elf ears anymore.
Oh, that's right. She now smells of well, I don't know.
But I like the Easy B. Maybe we could do a shirt. Maybe we could do Easy Breezy Doundren Girl with a purple-haired drow. Never mind. So let's get to topic 3. Topic 3 is the big one, which is
Eric. You're going to lead this off because you did a show on this, and so you need to set the stage for us here.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, way back when the OGL almost became not a thing, WotC corrected course and reclaimed the love of the community, theoretically, by saying we're going to put the SRD, the 5.1, into the Creative Commons. And lo and behold, in a very rushed job, they did. And it included in the Creative Commons, in the text of the SRD, I believe Strahd and Orcus. And
now explain the context. What the Creative Commons, when you put something in the Creative Commons, what does that actually mean, Eric?
It means that the words that you're putting into the Creative Commons can be used by others that are following the license. In this case, the CC BY 4.0 which allows you to do derivative works, commercial works. You just got to acknowledge the source material. It was owned by WotC.
Right.
So, but it just because it included things like Orcus and Strahd didn't mean that you could use Strahd as the I don't know, Ravenloft
Immortal
demigod.
Vampire Ravenloft. You could use the name Strahd, but it couldn't refer to him as the Immortal Lord of Ravenloft.
Right. So
when are you going to use Strahd otherwise?
You can have Orcus the Stable Boy, but not Orcus the demigod Prince of Demons.
Well, he was always a god.
I'm going to the bathroom. What are you going to do? Are you going to do an Orcus or a Strahd? Oh, I'm just going to Orcus.
I'm just going to do Orcus this time. So this time, they released the 5.2, and there's a big. Everybody was getting anxious. Oh, they announced it. It's going to be next week. They released the 5.2 SRD under the Creative Commons BY 4.0, and I'm reading about it on EN World of all places, and somebody points out, hey, the text actually has D&D, D ampersand D, twice in the text, in paragraphs that are used to describe stuff when you're playing D&D. I think it was one of the lines, as early as like page 5. And then somebody else checked and said, oh, I think it's actually 3 times. Now, by that stupidity, I don't think you can put D&D on the cover of your product. But you could certainly, at the very least, repeat those sections verbatim and have people know that they are playing a game not derived from the 5th edition rules, but from D&D. And it's an unforced error that nobody has to make, but I'm not surprised that WotC actually made it. I wish I was, but I'm not.
And Ty, if you want to pop in here in the comments and just talk. So when they include D ampersand D in the Creative Commons, what does that mean exactly? You can use the term D&D, but just not specifically.
I don't think you can define it anywhere beyond how they define it. Now I'm going to throw in the first example. It's on page 5. Playing the game, rhythm of play.
Oh.
The 3 main pillars of D&D play are social interaction, exploration, and combat. You could include that sentence in your game. You can include it verbatim. They put that into the Creative Commons.
Okay. That's what you're saying now then.
So
is this an unforced error, or is this calculating, or is this just sheer stupidity?
I think it's an unforced error because their addendum to the license includes, please do not include any other attribution to Wizards or its parent or affiliates other than the provided above. This work includes material from the system reference document 5.2 by Wizards of the Coast, available at the SRD is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. So you may include a statement that your work indicating that it's compatible with 5th edition or 5e compatible. However, by them including D&D, you have muddied the waters at the very least.
Yes. As Ty said, Ty, for those who don't know our buddy Ty, he is a lawyer. Now, this is not his area of expertise, but he's just offering an opinion. He said, I think it would be perfectly legal to put a D&D adventure on the cover of your derivative product. Now, here's what's the interesting part is going to be, is somebody's probably going to do this, right? Somebody's going to test the water.
Oh,
somebody has to test the water.
Yeah, somebody's got to test the water here to see what if anything, WotC will do if I published an adventure and put a D&D, whatever that sentence was that Eric just read, and that was the tagline for my adventure. And I could just say, look, Creative Commons, it's right there in Creative Commons. That's all I did. I said D&D adventure is one of the 3 pillars of blah, 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 blah. And for what I understand and what I've been told the past week, the Creative Commons is irrevocable, correct, Eric?
Yes.
So once it's out there, it's out there.
despite their debate of the use of the word.
Well, WotC themselves have said what's in the Creative Commons. We can't revoke it. We can't take it back. So yeah, it's an interesting situation. Now, by the way, 5.2 is not released under the OGL.
Right.
So if you're going to be
Just
5.2, you got to use the Creative Commons rules.
So let's see. James Raggy, if you're listening, please put this on the cover of your next adventure. I'm looking at one of his adventures right now on the thing. It's Don't F the Priest. Please put a D&D adventure on the cover of Don't F the Priest. And let's see what happens. Let's just throw it out there and see what happens. Because it's going to be entertaining no matter what. Oh, man. This just... Well, I don't know what to even say anymore. This is just follows dick step on dick step on dick step. They just keep stepping on that thing. And they just can't get out of its way.
5.2 is, well, it's not a specific license. The CC BY 4.0 is a license at the creativecommons.org website. It's not a unique license to WotC. They didn't have a new license written up just for them. Now, by the way, I'm going to bring
all is going according to my plan. All is going according to my plan.
I'm going to bring something up because I want a Ty Beard opinion on this. Please,
well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. He's throwing his opinion out there. So
yeah, please do not include any other attribution to Wizards or its parent or affiliates other than the provided above. Well, please is not a legal standing. Right? Please is not, you may not, they're just saying please. So if they're just saying please, then do they know that they screwed up? I don't think that they knew they screwed up until it got out there. I don't think that, unless there was a WotC employee that was like,
is this the same intern that keeps screwing everything up? The same unknown intern that keeps, I screwed up again. This is like a bad sitcom. It's like Gilligan's Island. There's one intern there that every time something goes bad, they blame the one intern because, that intern canceled the OGL. He didn't cancel the OGL. The intern did. It was crazy.
The OSR intern, that 55-year-old guy we hired for minimum wage, he put it in. Damn it.
I always think that Gilligan's Island, if they'd have killed Gilligan 3 episodes in, they'd have got off the island because he was always cock blocking him to get off the island. I'm thinking this intern probably needs to be fired at some point. It just seems like they're really just screwing the pooch here. This intern is not a net positive for their company.
No. Okay, so now I'm gonna highlight Ty. Hold on a second here. There is an argument for removing inadvertent licenses, but it's tough. Once a licensee relies on the license, it can't be withdrawn, at least in regards to that license. So theoretically, Ty is saying if they withdraw it before somebody publishes with it, they can.
Right. Somebody needs to get something out tomorrow that says a D&D adventure on it, so we can. Greg, where's Greg? Greg was in the chat earlier. Greg, your next Shadow Dark thing needs to say a D&D adventure on the cover, and then we're going to find out what happens here.
Call it the 3 pillars. A D&D adventure.
Yes, 3 pillars. Man, this is, I honestly think they probably just should have left the OGL and the OSR alone because they've created themselves so much trouble by trying to do this Creative Commons switch. They should just left the OGL, which by the way, the OGL is still in effect. It has never been rescinded, despite their threats to do so. I just, I don't know why they would create this kind of trouble, but this is once again goes back to the fact that there's not a lot of game guys that are probably in the upper echelons of WotC anymore, and somebody probably should have caught this, and somebody didn't catch it. So I don't know who's doing their editing. It's not somebody like Alan Hammock or Steve Winter, I'll tell you that. Those guys were professionals, and they'd have pointed this out pretty quick. Man, I don't know. Jim, what do you think? This is just, I don't know.
I would rather watch paint dry than discuss WotC and this and all of this is just, I mean, the amount that I care about this, I understand the impact for creators. I understand that this is WotC just, again, mishap after mishap. And frankly, I am A, not shocked. B, I find that I can't even screw up the energy to care. And C, they're going to claw this back. They're going to make the changes. I think the fact that there's language in it that's vague shows me that they didn't run it through legal.
Yeah.
You know, like really and truly, you have legal for a fucking reason, which is before you put something like this out, you put it in front of legal and you want to say, okay, I feel all warm and fuzzy about this, but you're legal. So now I want you to take shards of ice and drive them into my heart and tell me what's bad about this.
Jim,
I listen to them.
I want you to tell me the truth here. Don't pull any punches. When you worked for a certain company, a certain miniature company, did they ever throw anything out there that wasn't run by legal first?
No.
Ever.
And so let me talk about that. I'll talk about that real quick. So one of the things that's really interesting is you get into copyright and trademark, right? And so if you buy any Games Workshop product, and you don't have to go to a half-price books and pull down an old Army book or a Codex or something, I don't care. But if you open it up and you look, you'll see which words and terms are copyrighted and trademarked. The Games Workshop has gone to the effort to copyright and trademark around the world. And to do that, to get the copyrights and the trademarks registered and so on, is roughly, well, it was roughly about $100,000. Roughly about $100,000 for every single term you wanted to copyright and trademark. And legal is there to prevent you from making mistakes and making problems. And so the last time, a couple of years ago, that Wizards started screwing around with the OGL, we talked about this last week, that the pushback was monumental. And I feel like I'm going to sneeze. The pushback was legion and anger and fury. And I think, again, right, it's out there, right? Legal's like, son of a bitch, we talked about this. But they did it anyway. And so I know of a couple of things from being at Games Workshop where legal was like, whoa, hold on a second. Let's just wait a second. Does that mean that, there's a lot going on in the comments. Eric's pushing a lot of stuff through, and that's okay. But so Agile Monk says, I know the Hasbro IP guy who okayed this. Okay, so that means there's somebody at Hasbro's intellectual property who signed off on it. But that doesn't mean that legal signed off on it. Now, the IP guy might be their legal guy, but they still went ahead and did it. And Ty's point, they can't withdraw it. The license is irrevocable. And the mistake argument is extremely difficult to prevail with. It's stupid of WotC to try to pretend that the Creative Commons was a better alternative to the OGL. I agree with Ty. I think the OGL was genius. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why there's still so many products that come out that are based on the OGL, because it's a foundation you can build on. The Creative Commons is like steel ball bearings coated in grease and oil, and you're trying to stand on those, and it just slides and moves around, and you never know when you're going to fall on your ass because somebody decides to throw more of these things under your feet. And I think if I was a company publishing RPGs, which I'm not, I wouldn't touch the Creative Commons with a 10-foot pole or anything. I think I would just stick with the OGL, and I would just be, I'm out.
Until they take the OGL away from you and say it's null and void, which they haven't done. There may be a reason they haven't done it. They may not think that they actually have the means to do it.
Again, I think one of the things we heard very clearly from Kurt is That didn't go the way they planned, and it didn't go the way
Yep.
they planned in such a degree that we saw the fallout from that in everything that came afterwards, which is we don't want to offend. We don't want to offend. And again, we've discussed this ad nauseum, right? Which is after they screwed up on talking about revamping the OGL, people were talking about it on earnings calls. When the guys at the tranche funds are asking you about your dicking around with the OGL on an investor call, that's a problem. That's your dirty underwear not only being coming out, but being put on a flagpole, and every single data wonk that is employed that has access to a Bloomberg terminal is literally crawling up in you and saying, why are you screwing up this thing? Why are you making people angry? And again, we've talked about this. This was not just people calling WotC, right? This is people calling Series 7 and Kid Robot. And when your licensors are coming to you and saying, why are you destroying the property we licensed? Remember that there are guarantees in place for how much money we will make on your licensing. And if we have to trigger those because of you idiots messing up the intellectual property we licensed from you, that's a bigger problem. And so we're in the weeds on a discussion about Creative Commons, right? We really, really are, because will they, won't they, will they change it? Again, don't draw attention to a mistake. If they correct it, if they try to correct it, it's just going to be more people it's out. They're done. Yeah. They've made their mistake, and now they have to figure out if they want to tamper with this again. And I am not one of these people that genuinely believes that they're going to get rid of the OGL, because they still are in the burn ward from the last time they talked about it. And they've made a number of statements about it at the time. I think publicly they've made statements about it. I sort of remember some stuff over the last year, but it's done. Like, this goose is cooked, and it isn't going to happen. And so what we're talking about now is, I think it's trivial. I do. I think it's trivial. I think our discussion about it, I think the three of us talking about it and what we're sort of saying, it's not going to change anything. Right.
Well, no, I mean, but Jim, nothing we say is going to change anything here, but it's still worth discussing because it's all part of a larger tapestry of everything that's gone on at WotC since 2023, since like 2023. And the fact they're just mismanaging the brand that they're caretakers.
And none of us are surprised by this,
no,
right? But I think
no, not at all. At this point.
I don't think anybody that's watching is really all that surprised by this.
This is my show.
At this point, we're surprised when they do something that doesn't have repercussions like this. We can't believe they actually did something that didn't come back and bite them in the ass.
And I think Jim makes a very good point too, is that if they try to correct this now, they are risking a whole OGL 2.0. Dare I say it like that? Because the OGL 2.0 is what they were trying to shove down on us. But they risk drawing even more attention by trying to fix the mistake that they've already done, as opposed to just hoping and going, all right, maybe we'll pretend that we actually planned that and we want people to use.
That is the way to go out. Yeah. Hey, we meant this to happen. We meant for this to happen. Why are you guys panicking? Yeah.
I think that really and truly. Oh, I hate that phrase. I really am of the belief that somebody said, I don't think a lawyer looked at this, or there's a raging discussion about who it is that was in charge of the IP guys and so on and so forth. But I've never known a lawyer who's willing to sign off on variable language in a contract. A contract is there specifically to spec out the scope and so on and so forth. Do you remember the George Clooney movie where he plays a divorce attorney and he's got what's his name's wife in it? It's a Coen Brothers movie.
Intolerable Cruelty.
Intolerable Cruelty. Yeah. Because what he's famous for is the Massey prenup, that the Massey prenup is what's being taught at Harvard as the ultimate prenup, that essentially it takes into account every conceivable scenario for a prenup contract. And what we have here is we have the Creative Commons license. And again, right, the very notion that you can use Strahd or you can use Orcus, but you just can't use them as Orcus, prints of the,
Right.
like, this is just dumb, right? I don't understand that because if you're not going to be able to use Strahd as Strahd or Orcus as Orcus, what the hell is the point, right? You're not going to have the tavern owner named Orcus. You're not going to have the fair maiden in the castle of your adventure named Strahd. I think that's just ludicrous.
But Jim, likewise, what's ludicrous is Fox going, you know what? We don't have the rights to Spider-Man anymore, but we can have the rights to all these other characters in Spider-Man comics like Morbius
and Kraven and Morbius.
And we're going to do a big budget motion picture about Madam Web, somebody that nobody cares about. And these movies, one after another, fail miserably. So I'm just saying, if a company like Fox can do that, and they think that they're pulling something over on us. I don't know what they think they're pulling over on us.
Magically wave your wand and put me in charge of Hasbro for a moment. Put me in charge of WotC. Okay. So I'm going to point out what we've heard, which is they're making a ton of money off the new edition of D&D through the sale of the online piece. We've heard this. We've heard this time and time again, that like 75% of their sales are coming from the online piece, and the Dead Tree edition is not the driver. Okay. So this is what, if you magically made me the guy at WotC, just as I've discussed here previously, that I would license out to whoever the number one, I would license out, I'd hammer a licensing agreement out with whoever it is that does virtual tabletop and so on and so forth. Here's what I would say. If you would like to publish adventures that use D&D properties, and that means all the monsters, don't let them play in the Forgotten Realms. Don't let them play in the campaign worlds. You don't get to play, God help you if you wanted to, I don't know why, but if you wanted to play in Planescape or Dark Sun, you don't get to play in our worlds. But we will let you use our non-character monsters, right? That you could have access to Vegapygmies, you could have access to Mind Flayers, you could have access to all of that. But here's what it's going to cost you. If you use any of these, you're going to sign a licensing agreement that says that you will pay us royalties. And those royalties have to be paid upfront based on print runs. And it has to be based on MSRP, and we're going to take 15%. But you have access to everything we've ever published as a monster, and we will have a codified list of everything that you would want to play with. And that's it, because that would give them the ability to license out what is the most valuable aspect of this, short of the campaign worlds and the non-player characters, specific non-player characters. But then it creates a royalty stream. And then the other piece you say is, we have final say on the product. That if you start to abuse it, we can kill the project and revoke your license.
That's so intelligent and so they would never do it. It's too intelligent, Jim. Wait. That's right. We're in make-believe world where you became head of WotC. Okay. Yeah, we're in the make-believe world. Okay.
So think about this, right? Like I was fascinated to hear Kelsey talk about how she got so screwed over the OGL debacle that she changed Sturges to Stingbats.
Mm-hmm.
And after it was done, she kept them as Stingbats as a gentle to WotC. I think we have reached the point where one of the things that WotC hasn't capitalized on is that they are holding on to an intellectual property. They are licensing it for merchandise. But the thing that they could do that could make them more money with zero effort is licensing out the IP for use by third-party publishers in a manner where they retain control of the property, they get a revenue stream from the property, and it lets people run wild, and they can control what goes into print, right? Like, you want to create a Lamentations of the Flame Princess and sign up for their licensing. WotC could take one look at it and say, no R-rated, no R-rated content, I'm sorry, no sexual content. I think it's a no-brainer, but they don't see it that way.
Well, Ty is right there. I'm sorry, Zatron's right there. But you got to understand, this is our make-believe world where Jim got appointed to be head of Hasbro. So yes, they would never do that. But Jim, who just became head of Hasbro, can now do that. So yes, that they would never. I was going to say something else, Jim, along with what you're saying is, that they've retained some creatures that you can't use. You can't use the carrion crawler. You can't use the beholder. So what does everybody do? All they do is
not license that out. Why would you not create that as a
because here's all they
revenue
do, Jim. Everybody has a carrion crawler. They just call it a carrion lizard or a death crawler. It has 8 tentacles. It looks exactly the same. It's just a different name. Beholders are called the eye creatures or the eye monsters. I mean, they're not stopping people from using these monsters. They're just stopping their revenue flow, as you said, Jim, that they could get if they licensed it. That they're not, the people aren't going, well, I can never use a beholder.
I'd like to show you my find layer. Ooh, here comes my find layer.
They even have a name for that. What they call them? Alex Kamer wrote a module and called them the brain eaters, or what do you call? I can't even remember what he called them.
Yeah.
So, they're not stopping people from using these properties.
Bob has a point. Bob raises a point. He says, "How would you say it is similar to the way GW licenses out their lines to RPG companies?" So here's the deal. Number one, RPG companies, there's only been a couple that have touched this. Hogshead was one, and I can't think of the other that did the 40K one that then went away. So they worked very closely together to give them all this background material and so on and so forth to try to make it a success. But eventually these things crater and it stops. I think you have to look at it the way that Games Workshop has looked at all these people making apps and making big production games and so on. So Space Marine, every copy of Space Marine that sells, GW gets money, and the company that makes Space Marine gets to use all the intellectual property the Games Workshop has spent since 1987 building up about the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And that's a powerful amount of stuff. D&D is 50 some years old. And D&D has 50 some years worth of amazing content that, yes, we've all talked to death about Baldur's Gate. And we've talked about some of these other great games. I think it's just a mistake. I think it's just one mistake on top of another self-owned that they didn't need to make. And I wish they wouldn't. I think the sooner they go to a licensing scheme and begin generating money in a way that they haven't, it's another addition to the bottom line. And it makes perfect sense. It makes so much sense because everybody who's invented some other, we have an eye tyrant, we have a floating beach ball, whatever the fuck you want.
Floating beach ball with eyeballs. Yes.
Okay, sure. Like the moment you can say, right, like you want to put a Dungeons and Dragons adventure on it, you have to sign up for licensing scheme. But signing up for the licensing scheme lets you get to put a Dungeons and Dragons product on it. You get to use Beholder instead of floating volleyball or floating beach ball or whatever it is you call it. You can use all these things because what you're paying for in the license is that all these D&D players can look at your product and say, hey, this is D&D.
This is what Judges Guild did. This is what Judges Guild did in the late 70s, early 80s. They got the license to produce material. I mean, it wasn't great material in most cases. Most of it was subpar, substandard. But this is what they did. They would publish stuff, and it wod say to be used with Dungeons and Dragons or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Or they did stuff for Traveler. They did things for RuneQuest. They did things for Tunnels and Trolls. So yeah, it's been done before successfully. It's not
that's like right. And come on, right? I'm tired of. I think one of my biggest problems with third-party content is that a lot of the times it's not very creative. It's not very creative. It's pretty sad, and I understand why you've changed names and so on and so forth. And yes, your fairy and Frawler is quite clever. Hats off to you. But I just find this tiresome. And truthfully, if WotC doesn't want to make the product, if WotC doesn't want to make the physical product and is willing to just let that part of the market go, then as long as they're going to do it, as long as they're backing away from it and letting the rest of the industry move in that direction, license it out. You get right of refusal and say, we don't like this. If you publish it in this form, we're done. I just don't know why they don't do it, because then they would have control. Then they would have revenue generation. I don't know. It's
because once again, it goes back to my saying that I say every time: no one in upper management is a gamer anymore. They don't understand how games work. That they don't understand what gamers want. They don't even know any gamers. They don't game. They lie to you when they tell you they game. They don't game. That they played EverQuest 25 years ago once. They don't game, and so they don't understand how it works. It's like so I'm gonna real quick. I'm gonna go to sports because I like to go to sports. This week the idiot GM of the Dallas Mavericks was interviewed about his trade of the generational talent Luka Doncic to the Lakers, and and by the way, it's been a disaster, absolute disaster. Lakers are great, doing great. The Mavericks will be bad for 10 years, 20 years, probably the rest of my life. And he was asked, well, did you not think this might happen? And his reply was, I didn't think the fans liked him that much. That was his actual reply. I didn't think they'd get that mad if we traded him. I didn't think they really liked him that much. It shows an absolute disconnect between him as a general manager and him as any kind of fan of the team. It basically shows you he knows nothing about the team. And this is what the same thing with WotC. Every time they make one of these decisions, they're showing you that upper management has no knowledge of gaming. They don't know what's going on. They don't know you as a fan. They don't understand what makes you tick. They don't know what you like to play. They don't know what you do. They don't know anything about you. And look, I mean, they just don't. I mean, it's not anything saying anything awful or ugly or negative about them. This is just not their area of expertise. And it'd be the same thing if you put me in. I know Jim loves model trains. It'd be the same thing if you promoted me to CEO of the model train company. I don't know anything about model trains. I'm not interested in trains. I would probably try to pretend to like it and try to learn as much as I could, but I would have no personal connection to trains or know anything about them. It doesn't make any sense to put these people in charge of a company when they don't like the company or the people involved in the company.
That's right. And
tell me I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong.
No, and I think the problem is, right, the problem is you walk a very perilous line. Game companies walk a very perilous line, right? Here, I'll center myself. You have people on the far fringe who love the product too much and don't have the business sense that God gave a gnat. and then you have people on the other side who are absolutely, I have my MBA. I don't know anything about this industry. I couldn't care. I'm chasing my 6-figure salary, and this is a stepping stone to another role that I want. And what you do is you have to merge this. I think that I've talked about Kevin Roundtree before. A couple of weeks ago when I was in Boston, I listened to a conversation from somebody. I was in a presentation where somebody was talking about what makes a great CEO. And what makes a great company as far as company culture. And a lot of the things that companies do to try to make their employees happy end up doing exactly the opposite of what you want. And a lot of the things that they don't bother doing are what the employees love and just don't fuck with it and don't change it. And I'm struck that time and time again, what we see from Wizards of the Coast is we see a disconnect. We see a real disconnect from the hobby. I would say this very from the bottom of my heart. I think that if you are going to be the CEO of a game company, the size of Wizards of the Coast, you need to go to Magic tournaments. And you need to go to Magic tournaments, and you need to be in Magic tournaments. You need to sign up and play in open booster drafts or whatever the hell they call it. I think you need to go to Gen Con and you need to say to yourself, number one, why are we not at Gen Con in a big way? Number two, you need to get into Gen Con's gaming and then you need to go to smaller conventions, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I was the CEO of Hasbro, I would go to North Texas. I would go to GaryCon.
Jim, it's called due diligence. It's due diligence. You're just doing what your job requires you to do.
Due diligence is when you're actually going through the books and you're trying to make sure it all makes sense. But what I'm talking about is actually listening to the end customers and going and actually seeing how the hobby is portrayed on the ground. Lionel Trains. One of the worst things about Lionel in the 90s and 2000s was that you had a bunch of people in Michigan and they sold to a bunch of stores, and there were a few stores moving. There was like a handful of stores moving 80% of their stuff. And they listened to just those guys. But the problem is that their customer base was dying. Literally hundreds of guys dying every day. And baby boomers could only carry them so far because they were looking at the cliff and they could see that it was just coming. And they ended up having a giant auction. They sold off all the tooling and everything else that was in the factory. They gave up manufacturing in the U.S., but they didn't have outreach. They didn't have what it really took to make it. You know, it took a CEO who actually was like, let's go out. Let's go to hobby stores. Let's see how we're represented. And they found out that nobody's representing them. They're a dusty relic of the 1940s and 50s. Their highest year was 1953, and everything since then had been a downhill slide. Their customer base was growing old. They had to figure out a way to compete with a major competitor. And that's the cycle of all of this stuff. Due diligence is something different from actually going out and discovering how it is that your company is working on the ground. It's important, right? It's really important. And when you have somebody like you have to have people on the road. You have to have people that are eyes on to this stuff. And if you don't listen to them, you don't listen to them at your own peril. And that's a big point that I think gets lost here. This is why that when the OGL debacle happened 2 years ago, it was seismic. I really can't stress that enough, right? They discovered very quickly how they had miscalculated because they were very comfortable in their bubble. Nobody was getting out of the bubble and nobody was talking to anybody else and nobody expected it to go the way it is.
Well, they managed to unite all gamers under a
banner of fury.
Banner of we hate WotC, which has never been done before or since. Was, you know, you had everybody from, you know, James Ryan.
I don't agree with Bob that it's empathy, right? I think it's just called being smart. Because there are CEOs that jump from place to place to place who are just looking at a 2 or 3 year resume pad to get some experience and so on and so forth. And then they jump somewhere else. But you know what? This always catches them in the long run. And it takes a great CEO giving a company drive and direction that makes a systemic change. And that's I mean I've literally watched this. I've watched this day to day, and heard about it day to day and seen it. And there are some companies that desperately need it in this country. There are companies all around the world that need it, and WotC is one of them. WotC is desperate to get. Like it's funny, right? I think I've told this story before. I'll say it again real quick. So I started working at Games Workshop in November of 1993. And one of the things that we had just come through is we had just come through the lead debacle where New York State briefly flirted with the idea of banning lead miniatures. And for the first time ever, every single miniature manufacturer in the United States threw money in an attorney to get this fought in New York State. And I have said before, interestingly, some of the companies involved didn't even have the $3,000 to pony up. They had to figure out where they were going to get the $3,000 that they were going to contribute to fight this. But that happened in the spring of '93, and lo and behold, we got through the summer. But over the summer, every single major miniature manufacturer in North America said, whoa, I got to find an alternative. And so this is where Ralpartha's Reladium came from. This is where Citadel's alternative came from. There were companies that were so small, they never bothered because, and Ratham shut its doors this past week. It didn't matter to them. It just didn't matter to them. But we had been through this over the summer. And one of the things that Workshop did is it gave us a reason to address a few things about the line. Number one is the line was too broad, way too broad. And we needed to condense it and shrink it to make it more sense. And we had sold racks. We had sold a rack of miniatures with the idea that you could have a set space in your store for Warhammer, and then a set space in your store for Warhammer 40,000 blisters, and Epic, and new releases. We sold 4 different racks. But they had been out in the wild for about 3, 4, I think the first one went out in May or June. And by November, we wanted to see what was going on. Now, you also have to remember that Magic the Gathering landed in June at Origins and hit in a big way in August at Gen Con. But we wanted to see what had happened. So we sent everybody in the American office throughout the northeast, southeast corridor to visit every possible store we could see that had a rack deal, any of the rack deals, all 4, just 1, didn't matter. We went out and we tore every store apart, taking notes, talking to store owners, and so on and so forth. I went to Complete Strat in downtown New York. I went to Time Warp in New Jersey. Frank Barish and I hit all these different stores. And we were gone for 3 or 4 days, and then we got back together at the start of the following week, and we traded notes. Now, one of the first things we found is, and I'm sorry, but I worked with way too many retail stores not to say this, there are a lot of lazy local game stores that never restocked the fucking racks. They sold out of every miniature, and they never bothered to restock them. And what did they do with the money they made from the miniatures they sold? They put it into crap. Okay, fine. There were stores that had racks that they were maintaining, and if they sold something out, they reordered it.
All right.
But there were a lot of stores that was a one-hit wonder, right? We found empty rack after empty rack after empty rack. We found stores that were starting to get caught up in Magic, and we communicated that. Like, we did essentially like an after-action report on every single store visit that we did. And we learned a lot more than we were ever getting over the phone talking to retailers, right? When you actually go to their store and you see that they never sweep it, and there's a decaying hamburger on the shelf, and oh, by the way, Timmis, the manager of the Complete Strat in Falls Church, Virginia, you never cleaned your fucking store, buddy. You see this and you understand why people aren't going in the store, why they're not buying things, why they're not selling things. But you have to go out and you have to see this, and you have to talk to people. We had a conversation. A few weeks ago where somebody did not like hearing that there wasn't a lot of Pathfinder at GaryCon, that there isn't a lot of Pathfinder coming up at North Texas.
There's zero Pathfinder at North Texas.
I got news for you, right? Like, I'm sorry you don't like that, but frankly, if you loved Pathfinder, and I think the fellow in our chat said very clearly, I'm one of the major producers of Pathfinder third-party adventures. Okay, sir, I'm glad to hear that. But, sir, you should make sure the folks at Paizo understand what we talked about. Show them the segment from our show. Talk to them about how there was no Pathfinder at GaryCon. There's no Pathfinder that's scheduled for North Texas. I don't know about Origins. We'll find out about Gen Con when open gaming registration starts in May. But if you are the biggest third-party publisher of Pathfinder adventures in this country, you need to talk to your friends at Paizo and say, okay, these assholes are saying this. Is there any truth to this? Or you can say, well, those nitwits on Talking Crit were talking about this, and I looked, and I didn't see any games at GaryCon. I didn't see any games at North Texas. I don't see any on the schedule for Gen Con. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, really and truly, I'm only reporting what I see. you may not like what I'm talking about. You may not like what I'm saying. You may discredit me as a source. I am fine with this. But that's why when we went out to stores, we took 2 people. So nobody could say, well, Jim's just an asshole and he's wrong. But Frank would say, nope, this is what we saw, right? We both signed off on the AARs for every store we visited. And if I'm Paizo, again, I'm sorry if this is a sort of off-topic example, but if I'm Paizo, if I'm the third largest publisher if I'm the largest publisher of third-party adventures for Pathfinder, and I'm in the comment section of Talking Crit, and the 3 guys at Talking Crit are talking about this, and you don't run that flag up the flagpole and point that out to Paizo, that's on you, right? And if Paizo doesn't give a shit about GaryCon or North Texas or any other con below Gen Con, okay, that's their decision. That's fine. I don't care. I lose no sleep over this.
People get stuck in their paradigms, though, because look, it's easier just to do what you've done before and to get the same result than it is to go out there and try something new and maybe get a different result. And I know that sounds dumb, but that's just how people are. That's why people procrastinate.
Yeah. So John Miller says it was Stephen Glicker from the Roll for Combat YouTube channel. Okay. I great. Good for Stephen Glicker. I'm happy. But here's the thing, right? You can only do this for so long until suddenly you're out of business. And I don't want Paizo to go out of business. But if you don't have anybody wanting to play your game at conventions, then there's a problem. And Stephen Glicker missed my point about that when we talked about this, because my point is you don't have people that want to play your game in a very public setting, particularly at GaryCon, where Pathfinder used to fill up 3 rooms of people. Now, you can say, well, we withdrew support from GaryCon because we disagree with the policy, or we withdrew support from GaryCon because we're no longer approaching conventions below this size, or we withdrew support from GaryCon's events for fill in the blank. I don't care. But I say, okay, you know what? If they think this is business as usual, that the people wanting to play their games, the people who want to play their games in public, that group is getting smaller and smaller. If that doesn't concern them, okay, you must have a master plan that I'm not keyed into, and I wish you all the very best. But I have a feeling there has been a shift in things, and that shift in things is not a good shift for a company. And come on, the market ebbs and flows, and there's points of hotness and points of coldness. And Pathfinder, I don't think, is very hot right now. I could be wrong, but I certainly don't hear anybody in Talking Crit at the shows that I go to. I don't see anybody knocking the door down to discuss the latest Pathfinder module. Or holy shit, I read the Starfinder module and it blew me away.
And not only that, Jim, if nobody, I mean, it comes down to if people are playing your game. Like you said, if nobody's playing your game at a convention, I mean, our convention has bunnies and burrows in it. Bunnies and burrows. And we don't have Pathfinder? Well, I mean, I just, if nobody's playing your game, that's a warning sign. And like you said, Pathfinder used to fill up entire rooms, 30 tables of people playing. And if you're not getting that kind of response now, that's just something you look
Mike,
at.
Look at how Paizo did with Paige, where
they screwed Paige.
They screwed Paige.
Yes,
I wasn't going to mention it, but yes, right. Like
they had a, for those that don't know, they scheduled a bunch of games and didn't have anybody to run the games.
Yeah. So let me talk about this comment in particular. Pathfinder appeals to Pathfinder players. Okay. Paizo is doing nothing to expand their player base.
I agree with that,
James. Let me tell you why this is important. So in what I always call in the middle hammer period, the red period of Games Workshop, right? It started in 93 and ran almost until 2000. The number one goal of Games Workshop stores was to do demo games and sell core games. because the math showed for every core game that we sold, we would sell roughly $600 to $700 in miniatures over the next 6 months to the person who got the core game.
Wow.
Now I want you to think about that, right? Like that's an army. That's an army. And every core game, we had a great shot of selling at least one army out of that. And that's why if you think walking into a Games Workshop store in the 90s, it was singularly focused on something. It was, right? Yes, they've changed dramatically in a way that I think is wonderful, where the emphasis is not necessarily pushing core games, because they were a little too aggressive in trying to sell core games, and I understand why. But every core game you sell to new customers, not existing customers, every one you sell to a new customer creates a new hobbyist who buys paints, who buys miniatures, paints miniatures, plays games with miniatures, blah, 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 blah. And this is why I think it's so important. You know, I always talk about this at Christmas time. Go buy some of the D&D starter sets where they're on cheap shit sale and drop them. You know, in the summer, they're cheap. They're discounted. You should buy them. And at Christmas, drop them into Toys for Tots box, right? Give some other kid the gift of RPGs that they didn't know. But Paizo has to expand its base. Paizo has to expand interest in Pathfinder. And the easiest way to do that right now is to capitalize on the sort of rank confusion around what edition of D&D are we really in, and truthfully, aggressively go for that. I think they would be very wise to publish a 16-page booklet that says, I've played D&D 5th edition for 10 years, but I want something better. And then take them through 15 pages of why Pathfinder is better than 5th edition. You may disagree, but Lisa walked away. John Miller asks who runs Paizo is still Lisa Stevens. I believe she walked away.
No, she walked away. But by the way, did you see what Gary just posted? That blows my mind.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a Pathfinder game in North Texas since 2019.
That sounds right to me.
Wow. But I'll say something. What you're talking about, Jim, the problem with what you're talking about is sometimes things just run their course. And I think the whole OSR and the way the OSR is picked up, I think people are looking for a simpler game now. They're not looking for the amount of choices, the amount of complexity. James Spahn kind of threw this out there too.
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't disagree with that. I think beginner boxes have to be amazing.
Yeah, I think they're just looking for a different game now. It's not the same kind of game. And look, Pathfinder, it was an incredibly popular game. It still has a big fan base, but I agree with everybody here that's saying they're not selling to anybody but their fan base. They're not. Because I don't know people that are out there clamoring to learn Pathfinder. I don't know anybody. I don't see on the forum. I'm on a lot of forums. I'm on a lot of Facebook gaming forums. Eric, you are too. Do you see people out there wanting to learn Pathfinder?
No.
Going, hey, is him out there teach me Pathfinder? No.
And their customer base is slowly being crushed beneath the weight of all their Pathfinder books.
But I mean, everybody's out there. They want to learn how to play Shadow Dark, and they want to learn how to play, all the other stuff. But they're not saying, I really, really, man, I think Pathfinder looks really cool. Pathfinder has a learning curve, and it's not something you just pick up. And the gaming industry, in terms of RPGs, has changed a bit to where we're looking for games that you can just pick up and play, pick and play. Nobody wants to. It's the same. It's the same paradigm shift that happened when war games fell out of style. The whole point of war games was you had to be pretty smart to play it because, look, I tried to play a lot of war games in the 70s, and I couldn't figure it out. I was a teenager, could not figure it out. Absolutely couldn't figure it out. That was part of the appeal of war games. They wanted to create this, we are up here playing war games, and we know all these things about Napoleon, and that was part of the appeal of the game. And somebody agreed with me. Wow. Oh, it's James. That's
okay.
Yeah.
But
that was part of the appeal. And so war games fell out of favor when RPGs started getting popular. People were like, look, this is much easier to play than attack on Napoleon or whatever. This is much easier to play.
So let me just throw something out here. I opened up a browser window and I took a look at something real quick. The Paizo website is like a year or two away from being what the Privateer Press website is right now. The Privateer Press website hasn't been updated since March. And we all remember when Privateer used to be something. And Privateer Press, I'm looking at their webpage right now, and it is a pale imitation of what it used to be. Now they've sold off War Machine and all of that, and they're down to 2 intellectual properties. You know, they're down to their games now are Level 7 Omega Protocol and Monster Apocalypse, and that's it. And their website is a pale shadow of what it used to be. And I'm looking at the Paizo website. Now they're still doing daily updates on the web page and so on. So it's going, but it's only a couple of years away from Privateer.
And I think we pointed this out too. PaizoCon has been online only for 5 years now. They don't even have a PaizoCon. They have an online PaizoCon, which, I mean, that's not really a con. I'm sorry. Online only cons aren't really cons. They're just a Discord page everybody gets on and messes around on.
And I, again, like, don't take any of this as me wishing ill will on Paizo. I like Lisa Stevens a lot.
I think we're just stating the facts here, John. I don't think, no, we're just stating the facts.
I think if I was Paizo, I would send my people out and I would send them to every single, there's like a top 100, 200 game stores in America that's really easy to figure out. I think I would send my people out to the top 100 and I would go have honest conversations. I would have at least phone conversations, but I would go to the stores and I would look at the stores and I would get out there and start asking some serious questions, because really and truly the best thing they could do right now, the best thing they could do is say, we have a world that, I would simply say, you got people who've never touched our product in 10 years. They simply were D&D 5th edition people. And I would just go after that market. And I shit you not, I would make a free book. We used to have the World of Hobby Games catalog. This was a little 16-page catalog, and Games Workshop, I sent out thousands of these. I would send out 25 or 50 to a retail store, and they were free. And I wanted you to put one in every kid's hand that wanted one. Stack them up. You run out, I'll send you more. And the stores that did that, every time a kid came in and was like, what's that? Here, take one. Here, take one. Right? The kid goes home, they go through it, they read it again, they circle stuff, they go back, they wear it out, they get another one. They need to do a World of Hobby Games. They need to do an introduction to Pathfinder, and it needs to talk about, hey, we understand that you've been playing 5th edition. We have a world you've never played in that's got all this detail and all this intricacy, and we're a gaming system for people that want to go to the next level. Pathfinder's here. We're ready for you to discover us. And that would be the messaging. And it would include some of the best art, some of the best examples of adventures. Would you like a world-spanning adventure? What was it? I can't even think of all the names of it, but there was the one where they finally explored where the spaceship crashed into the world. There was also the one where the Drow were trying to do something. The Dark Elves were doing some in the world stuff. Like they could speak to all of this. They could talk to some of the Pathfinder adventures. They could talk to all of this. And if they did this as a 16-page free booklet and sent it out to the best RPG stores in America and said, Jesus Christ, put one in every bag of everybody that comes in and buys an RPG product for the entire month of May, they would do more for their sales than anything I've beheld them doing in the last year, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. Mm-hmm. Because that goes straight for the jugular of all the people, right? Ignore Shadow Dark. Don't talk about Shadow Dark in it. Simply go after your D&D 5th edition. Because then, if your retailer is sitting on all this Pathfinder stuff that hasn't been selling, now you're giving them a reason to go buy it. And I don't think Paizo even understands how badly they burned a bridge. I know game stores that won't carry Paizo because every time they bring stuff in, when Paizo would have one of their giant sales, they felt like they were losing sales of Pathfinder directly to Paizo. And that did not help the problem. That's what happened with Privateer Press. That's what happened with all these other companies. As soon as you feel like you're in competition with the manufacturer itself, they start to not carry the line. And I think that's another part of the problem.
Fair enough.
Agreed.
And you know what? And that's actually probably a good spot. I got to be on the road at like 7:30 in the morning.
Dear God, that's right. You've got.
I'm driving to Michigan. And
what are you going to Michigan for?
Tell us and I don't have a co-pilot. I've got a. No, she's not even a navigator. She is my the radio person. I guess she'll be in charge of the radio. Because if Rach drove.
Oh my! Yeah.
Blind,
you can't switch off with Rach halfway through.
No.
It's not going to work out. Yeah.
I got to plan out my potty.
Okay, so where are you going tomorrow?
We're going to WotC.
There you go.
Yeah. WotC is Friday through Sunday.
And this is their first Wizard. This is the first one, right? First Wizard.
Kalamazoo. So
all right, hopefully it goes good. I like to see smaller cons succeed, so hopefully it does well.
I think there's a couple of hundred pre-registered already. And I know the local TV station did like a 1-minute piece on it when they did their like what's going on in Kalamazoo or whatever the county was. I was like, interesting. So that should be fun. And I already bought my 5-hour energies for the trip. So
nice. All right.
I'm ready.
Well, good luck. You guys be careful. That sounds fun. So I guess no show this Friday and no.
Probably no. Listen, if there are live streams, I'll be the first to know about it. And figure Sunday is I'm driving back on Sunday, and there will still be inappropriate characters at 7 p.m. on Rumble, and I will be appearing via my phone. It should be a very interesting experience.
Will you be driving at the time or not?
I will be driving at the time.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be yes. We'll be
it's going to. You'll hear the New York driver come out of me as.
You scream at people.
Oh my God, my potty mouth. So, Mike, thank you. Jim, thank you. Next week we have Bill, right? Bill Webb.
Bill and Zach will be here too, and maybe Jen, maybe even Jen.
Oh my God! Can we do like a Brady Bunch thing and have like
Oh,
we don't have enough for that. Do we have enough for Hollywood Squares?
Maybe I don't know.
I don't think. I'm beginning to debate if I'm really a value add here. I'm afraid that I rant too much.
Oh no, you'll be perfect. Somebody's got to keep Bill Webb in line.
If we get a word in edgewise. No, he'll be. Yeah, we'll be talking about Necromancer's game, which is gonna. I think it's almost already funded.
Today. I didn't get a chance. I've been running around today, getting ready.
It may have already funded, so good deal for that. It's a box set game about how to run games for large amounts of people, sometimes up to 20. So
I don't even have that many friends.
I get worried when I do more than 5. I don't know how you just.
Next week we'll have our first easy breezy Doendrin update.
Ooh.
Forward to that.
I'm looking forward to that. So, folks, and by the way, those that have been waiting, there was no daytime live last week because of my severe allergies. There's no daytime live this week between doctor's appointments and being at a con. But it'll come back sometime next week. We will do that. So, other than that, thank you all. Thank you to Agile Monk for bringing for what's that word from Star Trek? Assimilating more of our viewers into the elite club. So be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice, roll them well. I'll still be doing videos, so I'll catch you guys from the con.